اوكي، السلام عليكم. هلا وصلني استفسارات كثير عن ال requirement phase، فلذلك عملت extension ل requirement until Sunday morning الساعة 9. هلا في ال requirements مطلوب منا نسلم 4 types من ال requirements اللي هم ال business requirements which is the objective of your system, only general objective of your system without any details. في ال user requirements راح نشوف شو ال user groups الموجودين عندي، وأشوف how do they will use your system، شو ال objective لكل أو شو ال benefits اللي راح يحصلها كل user group. For example في ال registration system حكينا ال main categories لل users اللي هم ال instructors وال students. So how the instructor will use the system, how the student will use the system also. Regarding the functional requirements should be very detailed, and you should be consistent when you write your functional requirements. Functional requirements, for example, the user should log into the system, the user should display information, the user should do some computations and so on. لازم تكون very detailed بحيث إنه أعتمد عليها to build our design and to build our implementation later on. بالنسبة لل non-functional requirements حكينا في main categories لل non-functional requirements اللي بنعتمد عليهم for example security, response time, efficiency, effectiveness. في categories موجودين في chapter 6 you have to follow. مش بالضرورة كل ال systems يكون عندهم كل أنواع ال non-functional requirements، ف you have to select the ones which are related to your project. When you selected, you have to check how does this requirement affect my project. For example, security, we should have username and password, we should have some access control rules and so on. requirement phase not related to the lab. ما في داعي لأي diagrams، ف you don't have to depend on the lab. هلا بالنسبة لللاب راح أطلب من ال TA راح تنزل لكم برضو videos how to work with DFDs and other diagrams until we get back to our normal class. Okay. في المحاضرة الماضية بلشنا في ال DFD. برضو وصلني إيميلات كثير إنه كان في عنا مشكلة بالفيديو الأول data flow diagram، لكن I think غيرت بالسيتنج فما في مشكلة الآن anybody can بكل الأحوال في الأناليسيس حكينا في عندي two activities اللي هم requirement determination and requirement structuring. بهذا الشابتر رح نأخذ النوع الأول requirement structuring اللي هو process modeling using data flow diagram, which is graphically represent the processes that capture, manipulate, store and distribute data between the system and the ال DFD راح يكون مقسم لأكثر من levels. راح نبدأ في ال context diagram which represent the scope of your system. لذلك راح يكون في عنا one process only. راح يكون في عنا external entities اللي هم source and sinks اللي related for your system. Okay. لذلك راح تكون one process. You shouldn't have any data stores. You shouldn't have any other process. For symbols لما بدنا نرسم الداتا flow diagram في عنا ال process which is the action to be taken. Data store data at rest means the data inside your system which will be saved later on in a database table في ال conceptual data model. Source والsink. الsource اللي رح ناخذ منه المعلومات to be processed. الsink ال destination اللي رح توديله ل processed information. فبالتالي they are both external entities which are not related to your system. Data flow, which are the arrows depicting the movement of information in and out processes. Having only process 0, I will add process. هلا suppose إنه أنا في عندي البروسيس 1.0 will send data flow to data store D2. اوكي، هلا ممكن انا اجي ارسم لاين من البروسيس 1 ارسمها راح تعمل كروس مع بروسيس 2 لحد ما اوصلها للدي 2. يعني طبعا مش راح تكون بهاي السمبlicity الموجودة عندي بهذا الليفل 0 diagram. Sometimes you will have very complex data flow, you will have multiple processes, multiple data stores. فبهاي الحالة راح يصير في عندي كروس لللاين، راح هذا اللاين يتداخل مع هذا الداتا فلو، راح يتداخل مع هاي البروسيس لحد ما يوصل للدي 2 data store. To avoid this kind of crossing lines of discrepancies or confusion بالdata flow diagram just بالمنظر، instead of having this crossing lines I will decide to repeat this data store. I will put here data store, I will draw it data store D2. لكن عشان نوضح للend users إنه this is the same D2, this is not a new D2، راح أحط عليها مثلا double square. فلما راح يشوف الend user إنه I have D2 with double square, I will understand that there is a repetition of D2 as a data store. I'm just repeating data store D2 just to avoid any crossing line, just to avoid confusion when you develop your data flow diagram. فهي فقط للحفاظ على appearance للداتا flow instead of having confusion, instead of having crossing line. Sometimes you can repeat some data stores, some processes عشان تميزهم عن إنه هاي البروسيس repetition. ممكن أحط عليهم double line، ممكن أحط عليهم diagonal أحطها بالنص عشان أوضح للend user إنه this is only a repetition, so you don't نكون خلصنا كل الرولز related للداتا flow diagram. So when you want to develop your DFD related to your project, just be careful. You have to follow all these rules just to develop a correct DFD. مشان هيك الفيز اللي بنسلم فيها الداتا flow we should have discussion, we should have presentation just to check inconsistencies, just to check if you miss any kind of rules, to repeat it and to put it into your logical physical aspects of the system are removed as much as possible, which is independent of any. New logical for the new system includes additional function. Obsolete functions are removed for sure. We will ignore all the limitations. Inefficient data flow are reorganized. New physical represents the physical implementation of the new. Now, guidelines for drawing a data flow diagram. We should have completeness, we should have consistency. Regarding the completeness of our DFD, the DFD must include all the components necessary for the system. You should discuss all the processes, all the data flows, all the data stores related to your system. So it should be complete, it should be comprehensive data flow diagram. Each component must be fully described in the project dictionary or the case repository. When you develop your data flow diagram using Visio, you will see how to develop all these processes, data flows, and data stores. Consistency, the extent on which information contained on one level or of a set of nested DFDs is also included on another level. So you should be consistent in the meaning, consistent in the component, and the information you have at any level and the other next levels. Okay. Timing, it's not identified on the DFD, but you have to take care when you develop your DFD. how long does it take to produce this process and this process and so on. So you should be careful, regardless if the timing is not represented or it's not taken into consideration when developing the DFD. Best to draw DFDs as if the system has never started and will never stop. Iterative development, I think you need to repeat the DFD drawing more than one time just to get one correct version of your DFD. You also need to repeat more and more just to get correct version, because as we discussed previously, we have several rules, we have several guidelines to develop the DFD, so you have to check it more and more just to get and repeat it for several times just to get one correct version. So analysts should expect to redraw diagram several times before reaching the closest approximation to the system being modeled. Okay. Primitive DFDs. As we said previously, we will decompose, we will add more details to our DFD. So we will start with context diagram, then we will have level 0 diagram, level 1 diagram, level 2 diagram. But how we decide to stop having more levels DFD? The lowest level that we can reach on the data flow diagram called primitive DFDs. This is the lowest level. This is the maximum details that you can get whenever you develop your DFDs. For example, context, level 0, level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4. So I decide to stop at level 4. So level 4 will be our primitive data flows. The lowest logical level of decomposition decision has to be made when to stop decomposition. So I have to decide whenever I have to stop decomposition. What's the rules, what the action that should be checked in order to say that this is my primitive DFD or not. So rules for stopping decomposition. دائما لما بيكون في عنا البروسيس includes two decisions. For example, if you pass, then go to process 1. If you fail, go to process 2. This process will have two actions. So I will decompose this process into two sub-processes. One process to process the information when you pass, and another process to process your information when you fail. So when you want to decide I will stop decomposition, every process should have only one decision to be made, only one calculation to be made. لما بيكون في عنا بالديزاين مثلا drop down list, if you check مثلا you are a physician, you will take some action. If you are a nurse, you will take another action. If you are a patient, you will take another action. فدائما لما بيكون برضو في عنا drop down list, you have to decompose this process into sub processes, one for different category of your users. Every process should have only one decision, one action to be taken. Otherwise, if you have multiple decisions, multiple actions, then you have to decompose this process into sub-processes until you reach for one decision and one action to be taken. So our rules for stopping decomposition: when each process has been reduced to a single decision, calculation, or database operation. When each data store represents data about a single entity. كل data store بتخزن لي معلومات عن one table, one entity later on في ال conceptual data model. Okay. Also, when the system user doesn't care to see any more detail, I'm not interested to see more details, but you have to add multiple levels to your data flow. So don't say I'm not interested in seeing more details and stop at level 0, because I'm sure you will have more details and you have to develop other levels of DFDs. So let's say minimum you will have a level 2 diagram, level 2 data flow diagram. when every data flow doesn't need to be split further to show that the data are handled in so ignore all this information. Just take into consideration when you have more details, when you have more one decision, more than one action to be taken for every process, I have to decompose and I have to add other sub-processes to handle every action, to handle every decision, so that I will have one action and one decision, one computation for every process. Gap analysis, when you want to find if there is a discrepancies, if there is a changes between multiple levels of your DFD or at the same level of DFD, this kind of analysis called gap analysis. Gap analysis, the process of discovering discrepancies between two or more set of data flow diagrams or discrepancies within a single data flow diagram. في الكونتكست diagram حكينا في عندي one input من الكاستمر one output على الكيتشن، لكن اجينا على الليفل 0 diagram I still have one input، لكن الانبوت هذا كان جاييني من المانجر والاوتبوت كان طالع مثلا للكيتشن. فبهاي الحالة I have discrepancies, I have changes in the rules. So also even if I have one input بالcontext diagram, one input level 0 diagram, but I have discrepancy because the input at the context diagram comes from customer, but in the level 0 diagram it comes from a manager, which is completely inconsistent with the context diagram. So this is what I mean by gap analysis. Inefficiencies in the system can often identify through our DFD. Okay, I will stop here. In the next class, we will take decision table as a new topic. I will also provide you with some examples about data flow diagram, other examples about the errors in developing data flow diagram, just to take a practice about how to develop DFD and how to find errors in our DFDs. So have a good day. See you next time.